ज्ञानतिमिरान्धस्य ज्ञानाञ्जनशलाकया चक्षुरुन्मीलितं येन तस्मै श्रीगुरवे नमः। श्रीचैतन्यमनोभीष्टं स्थापितं येन भूतले स्वयं रूप कदा मह्यं ददाति स्वपदान्तिकम्। वन्देऽहं श्रीगुरोः श्रीयुतपदकमलं श्रीगुरुं वैष्णवांश्च श्रीरूपं साग्रजातं सहगणरघुनाथान्वितं तं सजीवं साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्णचैतन्यदेवं श्रीराधा कृष्णपादान् सहगणललिता श्रीविशाखान्वितांश्च। नमां विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रेष्ठाय भूतले श्रीमते भक्तिवेदान्तस्वामिनिति नामिने। नमस्ते सारस्वते देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेषशून्यवादे पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे। नमो महावदन्याय कृष्णप्रेमप्रदायते कृष्णाय कृष्णचैतन्य नाम्ने गौरत्विषे नमः। हे कृष्णकरुणासिन्धो दीनबन्धो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिकान्त राधाकान्त नमोऽस्तुते। तप्तकाञ्चन गौराङ्गी राधे वृन्दावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये। वञ्चकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपासिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। ॐ नमो भगवते वासुदेवाय। नमस्कार। So we will start from verse number 25, chapter 4, Bhagavad Gita. So I would like to request you to share the screen from 25 to 28 we will chant. दैवामिवापरे यज्ञं योगिनः पर्युपासते ब्रह्माज्ञावापरे यज्ञं यज्ञेनैवोपजुह्वति। Daivam, in worshipping the demigods, eva, like this, apare, some others, yajnam, sacrifices, yoginaha, mystics, pariyupasate, worship perfectly Brahma of the absolute truth, Agnau in the fire, Apare others, Yajnam sacrifice, Yajnena by sacrifice, Eva thus, Upajuhuvati offer. Translation. Some yogis perfectly worship the demigods by offering different sacrifices to them. Some other sacrifices in the fire of Supreme Brahman. So we see from verse number 25, Bhagavan starts describing different kinds of sacrifices. And here in this verse, verse number 25, Bhagavan talks about Deva Yajna and Brahma Yajna. Deva Yajna, that is performed by the Karma Yogis, and they offer different kind of products, Dravya. And in Brahma Yajna, we see they are performed by the Jnana Yogis by offering their own existence. So verse 26, श्रोत्रादीनिन्द्रियाण्यन्ये संयमाग्निषु जुहुवते शब्दादीन् विषयानन्य इन्द्रियाग्निषु जुहुवते. Shrotra adini, such as the hearing process, Indriyani, senses, Anye, others, Samyama, of restraint, Agnishu, in the fires, Juhuvati, offer, Shabda Adin, sound vibration, etc. Vishayan, objects of sense gratification, Anye, others, Indriya, of the sense organs, Agnishu, in the fires, Juhuvati, they sacrifice. Translation. Some, that is the unadulterated brahmacharis or the Naishtik brahmacharis, they sacrifice the hearing process and the senses in the fire of mental control, and others, that is the regulated householders, sacrifice the objects of the senses in the fire of the senses. So we see in this verse, verse 26, Bhagavan says about two kinds of sacrifices. One is Brahmacharya Yajna, performed by the Brahmacharis, and there they offer their senses in the fire of restraint, that is Samyama. And the other form is Garhasthya Yajna, that is performed by the Grihasthas, that is the householders, and in that they offered their objects of senses, the objects of senses in the fire of restraint, that is Samyama. So verse 27. Sarvanindriya karmani pranakarmani chapare atmasamyama yogagnam juhuvati jnana deepite. Sarvani, of all, indriya, the senses, karmani, functions, prana karmani, functions of the life breath, cha, also, apare, others, atma samyama, of controlling the mind, yoga, the linking process, agnau, in the fire of, juhuvati, offer, jnana deepite, because of the urge for self-realization. Translation. Others who are interested in achieving self-realization through control of the mind and senses offer the functions of all the senses and of the life breath as oblations into the fire of the controlled mind. So this is about Yoga Yajna performed by the Dhyana Yogis. There they offer the Prana Vayu in the fire of controlling the mind and senses, Atma Samyama. verse 28. द्रव्ययज्ञास्तपोयज्ञा योगयज्ञास्तथा परे स्वाध्यायज्ञानयज्ञश्च यतयः संशितव्रताः. Dravyajñāha, sacrificing one's possessions. Tapayajñāha, sacrifice in austerities. Yoga yajñāha, sacrifice in eightfold mysticism. Tatha, thus. Apare, others. Swadhyaya, sacrifice in the study of the Vedas. Jnana yajñāha, sacrifice in advancement of transcendental knowledge. Cha, also. Yatayaha, enlightened persons. Samshita vrataha, taken to strict vows. Translation. Having accepted strict vows, some become enlightened by sacrificing their possessions, and others by performing severe austerities, by practicing the yoga of eightfold mysticism, or by studying the Vedas to advance in transcendental knowledge. So we see in this verse, Bhagavan talks about 4 kinds of sacrifices. Dravya yajnaha, that is sacrificing the possessions that we have in our possession, sacrificing those items. So it is actually charity, danam. And number 2, Bhagavan says, is tapayajnaha, that is austerity, means sacrificing the comforts of life. Number 3 is dhyana, yoga yajna or dhyana yajna, that is ashtanga yoga. And number 4 is swadhyaya, that is sacrifices of studying the Vedas and different scriptures. So these are the 4 types of sacrifices described here. Okay, text 29 also we will chant. Apane juhuvati pranam prane panam tatha pare pranapana gati rudhva pranayama parayanaha apare niyataharaha pranan praneshu juhuvati. Apane, in the air which acts downward. Juhuvati, offer. Pranam, the air which acts outward. Prani, in the air going outward. Apanam, the air going downward. Tatha, as also. Apare, others. Prana, of the air going outward. Apana, and the air going downward. Gati, the movement. Rudhva, shaking. Prana ayama, trance induced by stopping all breathing. Parayanaha, so inclined. Apare, others. Niyata, having controlled. Aharaha, eating. Pranan, the outgoing air. Praneshu, in the outgoing air. Juvati, sacrifice. Translation. Still others who are inclined to the process of breath restraint, to remain in trance, practice by offering the movement of the outgoing breath into the incoming and the incoming breath into the outgoing, and thus at last remain in trance, stopping all breathing. Others, curtailing the eating process, offered the outgoing breath into itself as a sacrifice. So this is about controlling the breath, prana. So different kinds of pranayama here, and by the power of that, we know many yogis are there in the Himalayas and in different parts who actually sacrifice like this, and they don't even eat anything in their whole life. Many such yogis are also there of this kind. So this is also another kind of yajna. Okay, so now we see in verse number 30, Bhagavan says that the common aim of all the yajnas is to controlling the senses. And the common result thus derived is, once cleansed of sinful reactions. Number 2, advancement towards the supreme eternal atmosphere. Number 3, becoming happy. And number 4, finally enters into the eternal kingdom of God, Brahma Sanatanam. So yajna, as we will chant the verse, we will come to know. सर्वेऽप्येते यज्ञविदो यज्ञक्षपितकल्मषाः यज्ञशिष्टामृता भूजो यान्ति ब्रह्म सनातनम्. Sarve, all, api, although apparently different, ete, these, yajnavidaha, conversant with the purpose of performing sacrifices, yajna kshapita, being cleansed as the result of such performances, kalmashaha, of sinful reactions, yajna shishta, of the result of such performances of yajna, amrita bhujaha, those who have tasted such nectar, yanti, do approach Brahma, the supreme, Sanatanam, eternal atmosphere. Translation: all these performers who know the meaning of sacrifice become cleansed of sinful reactions, and having tasted the nectar of the results of sacrifices, they advance toward the supreme eternal atmosphere. So how beautiful it is. Different kind of yajnas, how they lead us to finally enter into the kingdom of God. It is mentioned in these verses and in the conclusion in the last verse. And Bhagavan says that in verse number 31, we will see, Nayam lokas tvayajnasya kutonyaha kurusattamaha. Nayam lokostvayajnasya utonya kurusattama. In continuity with the last verse, that is verse 30, Bhagavan is saying this. So if by the performances of the yajnas we can finally enter into the kingdom of the Lord, on the other hand, what happens who don't perform this kind of sacrifices, any of these kind of sacrifices, there is no happiness for them. This is the conclusion. So in both verse 30 and 31, Bhagavan is actually concluding what happens to the people who perform this kind of yajnas and what happened to the people who do not perform this kind of yajnas. So, never, ayam, this, lokaha, planet, asti, there is, ayajnasya, for one who performs no sacrifice, kutaha, where is, anyaha, the other, kurusattama, O best among the kurus. Translation: O best of the Kuru dynasty, without sacrifice one can never live happily on this planet or in this life. what then of the next? So what about when after leaving this present body? Even it is not possible to get happiness in this life, remaining in this body, then what is to say about when a person is going to leave this body? So no happiness is possible to receive in this life or the lives after. This is the conclusion. Actually, from verse number 30 to 33, that is 31, 30, 31, 32 and 33, these four verses are actually the conclusion regarding the different kind of sacrifices. What happens to the performers? What happens to the non-performers? And then again, in verse number 32, we see what Bhagavan says. Ivam bahuvidha yajna vitata brahmano mukhe karmajan vidhitan sarvan evam jnatva vimokshase. Evam, thus, bahuvidhaha, various kinds of yajnaha, sacrifices, vitataha, are spread, brahmanaha, of the Vedas, mukhe, through the mouth, karmajan, born of work, vidhi, you should know, tan, them, sarvan, all, evam, thus, jnatva, knowing, vimokshase, you will be liberated. Translation. All these different types of sacrifices are approved by the Vedas, and all of them are born of different types of work. Knowing them as such, you will become liberated. So, all the yajnas are born of action, Bhagavan says, born of karma, which can be performed with body, mind, and intelligence. And they ultimately ends up in liberation. Verse 33, we will chant. Shreyan dravyamyad yajñāj jnana yajñah parantapa sarvam karmakhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. Shreyan, greater, dravyamayat, of material possessions, yajñat, than the sacrifice, jnana yajñaha, sacrifice in knowledge, parantapa, O chastiser of the enemy, sarvam, all, karma, activities, akhilam, in totality, partha, O son of Pratha, jnane, in knowledge, parisamapyate, end. So, Shreyan dravyamayad yajñāj jnana yajñaha parantapa sarvam karmakhilam partha jnane parisamapyate. Translation. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Pratha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. So Bhagavan clearly says here that Shreyan Dravyamaya Yajna Jnana Yajnaha means Dravyamaya Yajna. Usually they are related to the purpose of material opulence. Many people perform this kind of sacrifices with a view to receiving more material opulence. So that is usually Dravyamayad Yajna, but definitely charity is also performed in this connection, because the ultimate end of this kind of yajnas are nishkama karma. So by offering the few things, the few possessions in the fire of sacrifice, ultimately one becomes unattached, very slowly becomes unattached to the possessions. And so the end is nishkama karma. And we see that as we studied in the previous verses, in verse 25 we saw Deva Yajna, and here Dravya Yajna, verse 26 Garhasthya Yajna, they all can be considered in this category, Dravyamaya Yajna. And in Jnana Yajna we see the purpose of Jnana Yajna. That is why Jnana Yajna is considered as the higher, because the purpose is to know the absolute Lord. And the end of this kind of sacrifices is liberation. And we see the jnanis, the yogis, and the bhaktas, they all perform these kinds of sacrifices. So Brahma Yajna, Swadhyaya Yajna, Brahmacharya Yajna, they are all performed by the jnanis, as well as the bhaktas to some extent. And Indriya Nigraha Yajna and Ashtanga Yoga, etc., they are performed by the yogis. And actually the bhaktas perform mainly Nama Sankirtana, that is Japa Yajna, as we will see when we'll study chapter 10. There Bhagavan says, Yajnanam Japa Yajñosmi. So the highest of all sacrifices is Japa Yajna. So that is performed by the devotees. And that is why it is not mentioned here precisely, because this is itself transcendental in nature. As we see in these sacrifices, it is said that the ultimate end is to receive the knowledge, the highest knowledge, which will finally lead to the entry in the eternal atmosphere. And we see that all the bhakti yogis do all the activities for the, as they do all the activities for the pleasure of the Lord. And through service to the Lord, they actually receive the transcendental knowledge, which is the highest end. As we see here, all sacrifices of action culminate. Sarva karma akhilam partha jnane parisamapyate, as Bhagavan is concluding. All sacrifices of action culminate in transcendental knowledge. Jnane parisamapyate. So this is the purpose of all sacrifices, is to arrive at the status of complete knowledge. So what happens after that, that will be described in the next few verses. So we cannot progress to that section. So we will end with this. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya eva cha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavibhyo namo Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama.